Today we are going to be looking at factoring by grouping. When you factor a 4-term polynomial, you will be using factoring by grouping to factor it. So let's look at the steps. You are mentally going to separate the first 2 terms from the second 2 terms. Then you're going to look at each step there and factor out the greatest common factor of each binomial. Then you will rewrite it in the factor form below. So you're going to take the greatest common factor of the first plus the greatest common factor of the second, and then your second binomial here would be whatever was left over after you factored it. And it should be the same. So let's look at this example. We have x squared plus 5x plus 3x plus 15. If we break it down in the middle, so our first set here, we're going to look at x squared plus 5x. We're going to find the greatest common factor there. So the greatest common factor between x squared and 5x is going to be x. Now we divide it out. X squared divided by x gives us an x, and then 5x divided by x gives us a plus 5. Now let's look at the second set here. The second binomial, we are going to look at 3x plus 15. And we find the greatest common factor between 3x and 15. And that is going to be a 3. So it's a positive, so plus 3. Now we divide it. 3x divided by 3 is just an x. 15 divided by 3 is positive 5. Now if you look, inside our parentheses here, both of them are the same. So those are our twins. So you're going to take whatever's on the outside, x plus 3, so your greatest common factor is there, and make it a binomial. So x plus 3. And then you're going to bring down your twin, but you're only going to write it once. So x plus 5, and you just factored by grouping. Okay, let's look at some examples. So we have x squared plus 4x plus 2x plus 8. So if we split it up, we have a binomial, and we have another binomial. Greatest common factor between x squared and 4x. They both have an x in common, so we're going to factor it out. Divide it, so we're going to get x plus 4. Now let's look at the second binomial here. We have 2x plus 8. The greatest common factor there is a positive 2. Now we divide it. 2x divided by 2 is x. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Double check. Do our two parentheses, are they the same? Yes. So rewrite the outside, x plus 2 as a binomial, and then one of the twins, x plus 4. Okay, let's look at the next one. We have 4b squared minus 12b plus 2b minus 6. Here is where it gets a little tricky. So when we are factoring, the very first thing you have to do, no matter what type you're doing, is find the greatest common factor, and if there is one. Here we have 4, 12, 2, and 6. They are all divisible by 2. So we are going to factor out a 2 first before we do anything else. So we're going to look at the GCF of the whole thing. So if we factor out a 2, 4 divided by 2 is 2, and then we have b squared. And then negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6b. 2 divided by 2 is 1, so plus b. And then negative 6 divided by 2 is a negative 3. Now we can factor by grouping. So we're going to split it up. So we have our first 2 terms, and then we have our last 2 terms. So 2b squared minus 6b. The greatest common factor is 2b. Now divide it out. 2 divided by 2 is 1. B squared divided by b leaves us a b. Negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. B divided by b cancels out. Okay, let's look at the second 2 terms. Or I guess the last 2 terms. B minus 3. Here, we do not have a greatest common factor, but we technically do, because 1 can divide it into anything, or divide out of anything. So if we take out a 1, it's going to be a positive 1, we still are left with b minus 3. And our 2 parentheses are the same, so they are twins, so we can rewrite it. And then we're going to take what's on the outside, so 2b plus 1 as a binomial. And then in the very beginning of the problem, we factor out our greatest common factor. So we have to bring the 2 down, our greatest common factor. So now we factored. Let's look at the next one. We have 2a squared plus 3a plus 6a plus 9. Let's split it. So 2a squared plus 3a, and then 6a plus 9. Let's factor out the greatest common factor for the first 2 terms. So the largest thing we can take out is an a. So we're going to be left with 2a plus 3. The next one, we have 6a plus 9. The greatest common factor we can take out there is a 3. So plus 3. Now divide. We get 2a plus 3. Our 2 parentheses are the same, so we're going to take the outside and make a binomial, so a plus 3, and then our twin, 2a plus 3. And then we are done there. Let's look at the next one. So let's go back to 2 problems before when we looked at for the greatest common factor first. So we need to get in that habit of always looking to see if you can take something out first before you do factor by grouping. So we have 6, 8, 15, and 20. There's not a greatest common factor between these terms, so we can split it up now. So our first 2 terms, and then our last 2 terms. Factor out the first 2. So 6xy minus 8x. We start with the numbers 6 and 8. The greatest common factor there is 2. Now the variables x, y, and x. We can only take x out. Now divide it. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Your x's cancel. We still have to bring down the y. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. Your x's cancel out. Now factor the last 2. 15y and 20. Greatest common factor there is a positive 5. Now divide it out. 15y divided by 5 is 3y. 20 divided by 5 is negative 4. Your parentheses there match up, so we can rewrite it. And then take the outside and make a binomial with it. So 2x plus 5. Okay, let's look at the second to last one. We have negative 6mp plus 4m plus 18p minus 12. Our very first term here, we have a negative. So the trick is normally you want to make the first term always positive. So we're going to take out a negative number here. And we have 6, 4, 18, and 12. And all those are even numbers. So we have a greatest common factor here. So we're going to take out a negative, and then we're also going to take out a 2. And then our variables, we don't have any that we can take out. So let's go on and divide it. Negative 6 divided by negative 2 is a positive 3, and then MP. 4 divided by negative 2 is a negative 2m. 18 divided by negative 2 is a negative 9, and then your p. And then negative 12 divided by negative 2 is a positive 6. Now, let's split this up. Let's take the first two and then our last two. So the greatest common factor between 3mp and 2m, we have just an m. So 3p minus 2 is left over. Okay, now let's look at the second two. Negative 9p plus 6. Our rule of thumb is if the first term's negative, we want to take out a negative. So we're going to factor out a negative, and then 9 and 6, the greatest common factor there is a 3. So now let's divide. Negative 9 divided by negative 3 is a positive 3, and we still have a p. Then 6 divided by negative 3 is a negative 2. The insides match up, so we can rewrite it. And then you take the outside and make a binomial, m minus 3. Since we factor out the greatest common factor in the beginning, we have to bring it down. And there we go. Let's look at the last problem. We have 12a squared minus 15ab minus 16a plus 20. Here, well, it's supposed to be 20b. Okay, so here, let's split up the first two and then our last two. Here we do not have a greatest common factor to factor out, so we're going to factor by grouping. Greatest common factor now between our first two terms is 3a, and then we divide out. When we divide it out, we get 4a minus 5b. Now let's find the greatest common factor in our second two terms. Now it's going to be a negative 4. Divide it out, we get 4a minus 5b. Our two parentheses are the same, so we're going to rewrite one of the twins, so 4a minus 5b, and then bring down our greatest common factors here to make a binomial, so 3a minus 4. So that is your lesson on factoring by grouping. Please reach out if you have any questions.